Good morning, one and all. How the devil are you doing this fine day? I can hear myself in my headphones. It means I've got YouTube open. I do apologise. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Oh, I do want to very quickly say good morning to Big Boss Eco City over on Instagram. Don't know who Big Boss Eco City is, but seems to be here on a fairly regular basis. So good morning to you. Whereabouts in the world are you watching from, Big Boss Eco City? Are you really the big boss of an eco city, or is that just a nickname? I'm guessing it's probably a nickname. Good morning to you. Over into the main part of the thing. I know Dan and Gary were here early doors. Ken Hatcher has just arrived. Are you collecting weathers down in Wales? Apparently he's got cloud, he's got rain, he's got cold. Pretty much the same here. Just a bit drizzly here, to be honest. Bit dull and a bit overcast. Jim is here as well, saying morning peeps here. Morning, Jim. How are you doing, my friend? We made it all the way to Friday. I was actually doing this in the chat just before you came on board. All the way to Friday, and Gary actually said, yes, and in one piece too. Well, mostly. Yeah, I think I actually mentioned it in the chat there. I think one of the issues I've got at the moment is because ConExpo is now almost within touching distance. It's it's less than 4 weeks away, and I'm so looking forward to it that it seems like every week at the moment is taking about a fortnight, sometimes 3 weeks. Dan warned against wishing my life away. I don't want to be doing that, but I do wish it would hurry up and get to the point, because I'd really quite like to get there. I really would. Looking forward to going back to ConExpo. First port of call. I may have mentioned this before. After years of doing these overseas, doing all exhibitions actually in a suit, shirt, tie, and all of that kind of stuff, I now tend to do them in chinos and a t-shirt or something like that. But I also do it in trainers. Used to wear formal shoes, proper office shoes. I had good ones, so I didn't get blisters or anything like that, but feet used to ache. Now I always do shows in Skechers trainers with memory foam soles. There is a Skechers shop about a 10-minute walk from our hotel in Las Vegas, and it's about half the price of the Skechers here. So I tend to literally arrive in Vegas, dump my bags, go to the Skechers shop, and kick myself out for the coming days. And I have to say, and I wish Skechers were a sponsor of this show. If you're watching, please. They are the only pair of shoes, trainers, sneakers, call them what you will, that I can literally put on in the shop and then go about my business. I love me a pair of Dr. Martens, but you've got a fortnight of suffering before they actually mold to your feet. I've got some really nice Loke brogues here as well, but they took a bit of breaking in. Skechers, literally put them on your feet and away you go. And what I've discovered, this is how closely I monitor this. I can do 3 shows in a pair of Skechers before the memory foam has given up the ghost and so on. Unless one of those shows happens to be either Bauma or ConExpo, because we cover so much ground. So in a non-ConExpo, non-Bauma period, a pair of Skechers will last me 3 shows. If I'm doing a ConExpo or a Bauma, 2 shows. It's the way it works. Where's the Skechers shop, says Ken? Well, I'm staying at the Luxor, so I come out of there, I go through Excalibur, through New York, and it's literally facing me on the other side of the road. It's on the same side of the road as the MGM Grand, but just down a little bit. You can't miss it. It's bloody enormous. But yeah, very good value. In actual fact, not only are the shoes or the trainers, sneakers as they call them in the States, that much cheaper, but they often do deals. And I will be going there with both wife and 2 offspring. We may well end up getting sort of 2 pairs for the price of, or 4 pairs for the price of 2, and they will be discounted as well. So yeah. Ken Hatcher. See, he knows his Las Vegas geography. There we are. Dan is here, back. He was here early, gone away, come back again. And Ken, Gary says, Ken, is there a big black cloud that follows you about all day? You know what you just said there, Gary? I mean, there are times when I do actually think that you guys are watching what I'm up to. You know that thing about following you about all day? Hold that thought, because I've got a film for you today that plays on that, and I also wonder what the point is. We'll get there. We'll get there. Dan saying, "Can you get me a few pairs?" Dan, let's have a chat. Problem I have, of course, is if I'm buying trainers, multiple pairs, my wife's buying trainers, multiple pairs. Not only have we got a suitcase absolutely rammed with trainers, we're potentially overweight. But let's have a chat about that. Anyway, should we crack on? I think we probably should. I didn't come here to talk about trainers. I also think the weatherman's following Kent. Yes, he may well be. He is our resident weatherman, so no bad thing. Without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro and get this show on the road, beginning with a smidgen of this. Dan's only joking about the trainers. But do you remember when you used to do that? Do you remember when, I mean, if it was European, one of your friends was going somewhere in Europe, you'd always bring us back 200 fags, would you? Back on duty-free days. You remember that? And I'm going to Amsterdam. Oh, be sure to pick up some pollen. Do you remember that? Yeah. Let's have a look. Alex Latham is here. Morning. You're watching this from my IPAF instructor candidates who are undertaking their examination today. Well, first and foremost, good morning, Alex. Second and foremost, good luck to all the candidates. Very best of luck. You'll probably be gone by the time I get there, but I don't do a great deal with IPAF, the International Powered Access Federation. I don't do a huge amount with them. Used to back in the day when I was on Contract Journal and Plant Managers Journal. Not so much now because I've kind of gone off in a different direction. But let me just tell you something, and it does tie into my morning monologue today. There is something that IPAF does that every other trade association, a trade association allied to the construction and demolition industry, should follow. IPAF maintains a global database of incidents, accidents, near misses, fatalities. They all share this information freely, users, operators, manufacturers, owners, everyone. There's an accident, it goes into the IPAF archive. They then take that and they adjust, and people like Alex will be delivering based on this. They take that information, they monitor it for trends, and if there is a trend, a particular type of accident in a scissor lift or whatever it might be, they will then modify their training or create new training to ensure it doesn't happen again. Oddly enough, that's kind of the topic of my morning monologue today. But I have to say, IPAF, I tip my fancy hat to you because I do think that's exactly the way that this is supposed to work. Take that information in and spit it out in the form of training that potentially may save a life at some point in the future. Dan saying, I'll see if I can get you and Fred to video it when I get involved with a company involved. Okay, not sure. I don't know what that company is, but yes, count me in. Gary Muirhead says, can you bring me back some dancing girls from Vegas, please? Well, I mean, I've got two things to overcome there. I mean, the weight restriction is one thing. My wife would be another. But Gary, I'll see what I can do. One thing I would say about they have a very good line in patter and banter that you tend to have dancing girls patrolling the Las Vegas Strip, basically trying to convince you to go to a particular show that evening. And they've got the feathers and the thongs, and it's all very pleasant. And they charge you to have your photograph done with them, which I don't do, obviously. But the last time we were there, I said no, and I said I'm not having a photograph done with you. I've got my wife, and they went, "We'll have a photograph done with your wife. She's way better looking than you." Cheeky buggers. But yeah, they have a line of banter. Sounds like we could take a leaf out of the IPAF book for our industry. I agree 100%, if we weren't so up our own bottoms. Go back and see my messages. Dancing girls are expensive, unfortunately, says Ken. I haven't actually looked, but let's have a look. Where it? Not seeing that, Dan. How many more Fridays until ConExpo, says Gary? Well, let me think. There's one, two. There is actually three, but in my case, there's probably only two because where are we today? It is the 6th today, 13th, 20th. So there's the two. On the following Friday, which is the 27th, I will actually be in Leeds. I won't be here. I'll be in Leeds doing the Institute of Demolition Engineers seminar, their spring seminar. So, yes. But there are 4 before the show starts. Is that right? Oh, I thought it was 3. Dan says, I might be starting a job in Hull after here in Slough. Wow. Love to say good luck, but I've been to Hull. You'll need more than luck. Demolition of 6 tower blocks. Oh, fantastic stuff. Well, keep me posted on that. Looking forward to hearing all about that. Should we start the show? Because we are nearly 13 minutes in. It is Friday the 6th of February. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, and the authentic voice of the global demolition industry. In today's show, JCB's dual drive backhoe loader in action. We're taking a look at the cab of the all-new PC220 excavator. Harking back to what Gary was saying earlier, we've got a video that I've entitled, You Ever Get the Feeling You're Being Followed? We'll get there. And our countdown to ConExpo continues as our Voyage to Vegas series checks out the Hitachi stand, which is I'm looking forward to. And it occurred to me today, actually, it's the Hitachi stand. I mean, they are making, they're intimating about their name change. But this will be the last ConExpo for Hitachi, because by the time the next one rolls around, they will be officially called Landcross. Yeah, it's a end of an era and the beginning of a new one, I guess. Chris Ford has just arrived. Morning all, it's a bit damp. It's a bit damp. You're a bit damp. The weather's a bit damp. Possibly all of those, but yes, good morning, Chris. It's damp here too, my friend. Should we crack on? I think we probably should. Let's have a little bit of this first. So, how do I build this up? I know what I'll do. I think we're all aware of climate change and climate and weather change and stuff. Well, about 20 years ago, the national highways here in the UK had a long, hard look at the possible implications of our changing climate upon our road network. And as a result, it set out new standards, basically saying that future roads should be built to a new standard to allow for shifts in weather, climate, warming, hotter summers, colder winters. We all know what climate change looks like. And I have to say, I think that's incredible foresight. The fact that they did this 20 years ago, they actually, I think we're talking about climate change on a regular basis now. 20 years ago, it would have been a fairly sort of fringe subject. So they put in place this new standard and said, henceforth, all roads will be built to this standard. How many of the roads that they've built since do you reckon actually meet that standard? 7%. 7%. And one of the things that is most remarkable about this all came to light apparently at an event held by the Resilient Cities Network earlier this week. And the National Highways Head of Carbon and Air Quality, Angela Halliwell, said it's a good thing that the roads body has updated climate standards. Okay, so she says, one of the things we've done with regards to the climate is we updated our standards probably 20 years ago, and we proudly stand behind this. We updated our standards so they have a 20% rate of capacity for the kind of weather changes that are coming. The challenge is that we've still got 93% of our network running to the previous standards. The SRN, which is, I think what did I say it was? The strategic road network is roughly 7,400 kilometers long, meaning only, now bearing in mind, you've got 7,500 kilometers up to speed so far, 518. It really does remind me, going back a few years when Build UK finally gave way, I think, to subcontractor and public pressure and said that they were going to put in place a new standard, a new fair payment scheme whereby smaller contractors will be paid within 30 days, larger contractors within 60 days, and so on down the line. And after a year, they did a survey of their own standard and found that none, not a single one of their members had actually bothered to abide by the standard. I think it's come on a bit since then. But yes, 7,500 kilometers of road to be brought up to environmental standards. And in 20 years, they've managed 518. Well done to National Highways. Wow, what a fine organisation. What a fine performance you've put in. Jim says, I'm running out of new content, not much going off over the winter period, so I've stopped posting every day. Hang on a minute. I need to go back a bit because that came before. I seem to be getting loads of Landcross adverts on YouTube. Yeah, you and me both. It is one of those things. I'm astounded with the speed with which it happens. You know, I have a few kind of non-work passions. I mean, I watch quite a bit of 80s music on YouTube, so I then get served a lot of 80s music. I quite like van conversion videos. Never get round to doing it myself. I probably would if I was living somewhere a bit warmer, but I enjoy watching the process. Get served up a load of those. Get served up a load of cold weather camping. I quite like watching people camping in snow and heavy rain. You immediately get loads of those as well. But yes, Gary, this is response actually. Gary says, how's the YouTube channel going? And he says, I'm running out of new content. There's not much going off over the winter period, so I've stopped posting every day. Do you know one of the things that I think is lacking, and I've said this to Steve Williamson. Steve's very, very good. I mean, really, really good with a camera. But I think one of the things that is really sadly lacking in the sector is tutorial type content. I think Ollie Guns does a pretty good job of it, and I know Steve is pretty good with quick tips on GPS and that sort of thing. But I mean, bearing in mind we are in winter, getting your machine ready for winter, things to look out for, potential faults and that kind of thing. Literally a minute or two per pop, a pop. Just sit down, machine behind you. Here's the thing. Beware of this. There you are. Jim says, I have to put my mug on film when I get to 750, and he's at about 600 at the moment. I need to sort a mount for my own plant and tractor vids. There you are. It becomes costly. Let's have a look. That's fantastic, Jim. Not long till you hit the 1,000 subscribers, pal. Yeah, it all changes at 1,000. You do get some additional tools and that kind of thing. So look out for that. Have they scrapped the smart motorway scheme? Oddly enough, I mean, bearing in mind part of the notion of a smart motorway was to do away with hard shoulders. I get the impression that the smart motorway scheme has kind of veered over to the hard shoulder, and it's still sat there with its hazard warning lights blinking, waiting for somebody to rescue it. Yeah, as far as I know, it's off. It is off. And oddly enough, I mean, bearing in mind, I am reliably informed that one of the reasons that it was shelved was because of electric cars. If you have an electric car and it conks out, runs out of juice, or it has a breakdown, it doesn't cruise to a standstill like a normal car would. It just stops. So hard shoulders, you kind of need them because you've got to push that car somewhere, and that seemed to kill it. Oddly enough, it killed it when interest in electric machines, or electric cars rather, was on the up. I get the very distinct impression that interest in electric cars is actually going the other way. So, you never know. It may come back. You never know. Dennis Wager, all the way from the mighty US of A. Morning, Dennis. How are you doing, my friend? Are you? I'm fairly sure we've had this conversation. You're going to ConExpo, right? I think you are. In which case, I shall see you in Vegas. And don't forget, what happens in Vegas hopefully stays there. Jim says, I need to get my head around editing then I can put some longer videos together. Lots and lots of packages out there. I know a lot of people, and I think Steve's one of them. Steve Williamson uses CapCut. I know Fred uses CapCut on the go. Personally, I'm a Video Leap man. It's a freebie, and it's very, very good, but there's loads and loads out there. The one that I particularly like, because a lot of my content is talking, is Descript, or like description, but without the TION on the end. Descript. Absolutely love that, because you edit by words. When you upload a video to Descript, it transcribes it. So if, like now, if I called Jim Bob, oh bollocks, I've mucked that up. Now I could go into that edit, find out where I called Jim Bob, and then said bollocks afterwards. Highlight that in text, chop it out, and it chops the video for you. It's really very, very smart. I could then do a before and after my little project. I think that would be fantastic. I've said this before. There's lots of people that I watch. There's a guy. I will look him up one of these days to find out what his name is, because I talk about him quite a lot. There's a guy who does driveways. He just basically makes driveways in the States. Drives a skid steer. And he arrives at a job site, sticks a GoPro behind his head, films for a bit, sticks a GoPro on the ground, films for a bit, and then he puts that out as a video. And some of them are like an hour long. And he gets literally millions of views. So your little projects, I think, Jim, would be very, very useful. Dennis is going to be in Las Vegas. Dennis, I hope to see you there, my friend. And Dan says, yep, I've seen him. It's good. It is. The thing I like about it is it's realistic. It's not, I'm going to cut for this bit because I'm going to have a slurp on my coffee. It just keeps it all in. Here's the day at work. Because I'm sat here, somebody filmed me. I've got a cup of tea in my hand. I've got my phone on my desk. I've got bits and pieces like that's real life. And I think particularly now we're in the age of AI, I think people are more welcoming of real. I think we've already started the AI backlash. I tend to watch stuff, and the moment, unless I'm teaching myself how to use an AI, the moment I spot a bit of AI and nobody's mentioned it, that's a turn off for me. I'd much rather get down and dirty and real. At the moment, my projects only go on LinkedIn and still photos, a little paragraph explaining it. Bearing in mind, and I know you're putting it off until the inevitable happens, but bearing in mind, you could take those words, your paragraph or whatever, you could punch that through an AI. Some of them are free, and just get a voiceover for it. It's easily done. It's not a problem at all. So just very, very quickly, and I will press the button on the show just a moment. I'm using Google Gemini, which is the latest AI from, not surprisingly, Google. And they have what they refer to as gems. So it's basically an AI agent. So one of the things that I do regularly is I will write, like today's morning monologue, I'll write it, and then I punch it into Google Gemini and get my editor to make sure the spelling's right, the grammar's right, and it makes sense and everything else. So I use that all the time. But one of the gems that comes preloaded is a storybook. So I was sat there bored the other night, and I got a photograph of one of my grandsons who's doing like taekwondo. He's 9 years old. He's doing taekwondo, early doors. He's only been doing it for about 18 months, but he's really enjoying it. So I basically told this AI, this is his name. This is how old he is. He's into taekwondo. His mum's name is Georgia. That's my daughter. Press the button, and it wrote a book, like a mini book on, my grandson becoming a taekwondo champion and everything else, perfectly toned for a 9-year-old. So he absolutely loves it. But not only that, it actually makes it into an audiobook as well. So he can actually listen to a story about himself becoming a Taekwondo champion. Fantastic stuff. That's a use of AI I can get behind. We're now 26 minutes into the show, and I haven't shown you any equipment, so let's crack on. Very quickly, I will get to the equipment in just a moment. Just had this from Jim. He says, I have a stream-fed well to build in the summer using a big concrete pipe on its end. Be nice to get the whole process on YouTube. 100%. And if I can offer a bit of advice, do it as we have a problem. This is how we fixed it. Here's the result. So you basically, your hook, the start of the story is, here's a problem, because there will be other people out there that have the same challenge or whatever it might be. But that is, well, how did you fix that? Oh, you did that, and you did that, and you did, and what have you got at the end? You've got that. That's the way to do it. Lots of time-lapsey type stuff and all that. That'd be fantastic. Jim, produce the film. I'll run it right here on the show. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Anyway, let's have a bit of JCB, eh? Let's go dual drive backhoe loaders.
My name is Jack Elliott. I'm director of Jack Elliott Ground Waste Limited. I started my business in 2007 with a small mini digger, and progressed from there to a point now where we've owned 12 machines. Today we're carrying out completion of a large ground waste package that we've been carrying out for the client. We find backhoe such a versatile machine, can perform multiple tasks, and we find them very cost efficient to run. We chose the dual drive machine for this type of work due to its flexibility, versatility and cost effectiveness. We carry out a manner of applications with backhoe loaders, typically one-man operation, where we feel that the backhoe loader with the dual drive gives us flexibility to be able to do tasks such as ditching, repositioning at speed. Productivity is increased massively. Dual drive adds value on site in a number of ways. Certainly less fatigue and the amount of time required to do a set task. Repositioning now can be done in a matter of seconds, whereas before you'd be lifting your bucket, spinning your seat round, lifting your stabilisers, driving forward. Now all this operation can be done simultaneously, 2 or 3 actions at the same time using the dual drive. So dual drive is really useful for this sort of scenario where you're utilising a machine to pick and carry. In this instance we're moving some type 1 limestone and positioning it around a forecourt interceptor which is being installed. Dual drive certainly makes the job easier and faster. We found that we've also got perhaps the flexibility of a wheeled excavator on site while still having the versatility of the loader. We've had some comments from various customers initially surprised as to how this is happening. They've not seen the concept before. We find it fantastic that we're getting that sort of feedback, and our investment is certainly turning heads. And we hope that moving forward it's going to be contributing to our business model. In future I certainly wouldn't buy a dual drive machine, to the point where we wouldn't consider a non-dual drive machine anymore due to the amount of windows and doors it's open for us now on different jobs. We're still finding new ways where we can utilise the dual drive feature, which is helping us in our business. TC Addison JCB have provided help, support and solutions over the last 20 years which we've been dealing with them. Having dual drive on my backhoe loader has offered us time saving, productivity, comfort and efficiencies across our business, and our next machine will certainly be a dual drive machine.
Right, a couple of things. We've got a comment there from Dan. 4CX looks an awesome piece of kit, I agree. And Jim saying they look much better with black rims. Wouldn't argue with that. That dual drive, first time I saw that, my immediate thought was, Christ, why didn't they think of that before? At the end of the show, before I do my morning monologue, I'm going to show you a film. In fact, let me have a quick look. at the end of the show, before the morning monologue or before the ConExpo part, I'm going to show you a machine. As I say, dual drive. Why hadn't they thought of that before? What I'm about to show you in this film coming up is why did they think of that? It's maybe I'm not thinking about it properly. Maybe you'll correct me, but it's coming up. But we've got a bit of Komatsu first before we get to that. After this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, Komatsu are obviously going big at ConExpo, and one of the machines I'm looking forward to seeing is this one, the PC220.
When designing the next generation of Komatsu excavators, we started where it matters most, the operator experience. We know our customers spend long hours behind the sticks, so our goal was clear: to make your workday more comfortable, more connected, and more productive. The result? A cab that not only provides 30% more legroom, but is also easier to see out of as well. The PC220 offers 50% more visibility to the right-hand side than its predecessor, thanks to a newly designed monitor and monitor placement. We have also increased the size of our polycarbonate roof window and expanded the side windows, giving operators a clearer view of their surroundings to enhance confidence and safety on the job site.
There you are, the PC220. Somebody's just popped into the chat. What did they say? Still not seen any of the new Komatsus yet. I think there was a bit of a slow rollout, actually. I'm fairly sure when I was talking to them at Bauma, which was last year, I think the rollout only began at the end of the year. So I think it's still fairly early days. I wonder what McHale are up to, because obviously they're the new Marabini, aren't they? And they're in place as far as I'm aware. I promised you a slightly odd machine. I'll show it to you in just a moment, and I'd love your thoughts on how you might possibly use this after that.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Update from Dan there. I see Econ bought a few new Caterpillars. Let's hope they don't need parts and service, eh? It's a whole other story. Right, okay, I'm going to show you a film now. I'll tell you what, I'll play it and let you make your own mind. I won't do any more intro than that. I will just play it. I'd like to know, basically, how, where, and why would you use this function? So imagine you go home at the end of the day with that device still in your pocket. Your wife looks out the window and says, "Gary, why is your machine on the drive?" Couldn't shake it. Bloody things followed me all the way home. A whole new meaning on taking work home with you. Listen, there's a tiny bit of me that thinks that's clever, but there's a much bigger part that thinks I'd much rather be in the machine and driving it, not having to walk bloody miles with the machine lagging on behind like a lapdog. Dan says, wouldn't be my cup of tea. He also says, that makes no sense. Jim takes a slightly more positive approach. He says, stone, muck or produce picking, fencing, loading curbs and edging out with forks on. I'm sure there must be an application. You know, Wiedemann's part of the Wacker Neuson group. They're no mugs. They know their onions. I just can't think that there's enough of a demand for a machine that follows you. Now, I have a drone. I thought it was on the desk. It isn't. I have a drone that follows me. And that, to my mind, makes perfect sense because I can. Turns out, between you and I have got an exhibitor's pass for ConExpo. I don't know why I'm whispering. They're asleep in Las Vegas. I've got an exhibitor's pass, which means that I basically have 24/7 access to, and I can go in early doors, put the drone behind me, and I can walk around some of the stands and show. I'm quite pleased about that. But that, to me, there is a proper use case for that. And there's lots of people out there vlogging and all that kind of thing. I'm sure there's a mass demand for a self-following drone, a self-following wheel loader. Yeah, I remain to be convinced. Hey, I've just mentioned ConExpo. Let's think about that a little more, shall we? Yes, ConExpo. I said at the top of the show, and I'll say it again right now. Hitachi will be there for the final time. In April 2027, next April, they become Landcross. So by the time the next ConExpo rolls around, which will be 2029, Hitachi will no longer exist. They will be Landcross. This is the end of an era, beginning of a new era. Bit like what was it, 2 ConExpos ago when Doosan stopped being Doosan and suddenly became Devalon? We've got exactly the same thing again. Here's a very quick look at what Hitachi are planning to show off in their final ConExpo. Yeah, as you saw at the end there, the rebranding has already begun. All-Terrain Max, good morning, mate, over on Instagram, has just said, good luck with getting that little loader past a Tier 1 contractor safety man. You know the way to do that, don't you? Take that little device and stick it in his pocket and just have the thing follow him around the entire day before he surrenders and says, actually, this is quite good. It's a thought, isn't it? You imagine doing that to one of your mates on site, just slipping that into his back pocket everywhere he goes. A fucking wheel loader's following him he's down the chippy at lunchtime, and there outside is a Wiedemann wagging its tail, waiting for him to come out. I'm getting carried away now. We've got one final thing in the chat before I go over to the morning monologue. I wonder how will the name change affect the resale value? I think that's one of the reasons that they've pushed it back to April next year. They allowed themselves more than 18 months to do that. One of the issues you always have, more with new generation machines, I think, is it all has to be coordinated through the dealers because nobody wants to buy. Well, I say this. there's two sides to this argument. But if you know that there's a third generation excavator coming down the line, you're probably not going to buy a second generation. So the manufacturers tend to allow the dealers time to get rid of the second generation before the third generation arrives. I'm sure there will be a degree of that. On the other hand, I guess there is that notion, and this is how I tend to play, things like my drone. I bought my drone just as the new generation superseded it. The new generation's got virtually nothing more than my one has, but because it's been superseded, I got mine at, I don't know, 40% discount. It'll be an interesting one. I don't think it will change the resale value, if I'm being completely honest, because we all know what lurks under the hood of Hitachi. What will ultimately lurk under the hood of a Landcross machine, which is pretty damn good, actually, I would say. So no, I can't see it changing the resale value. In fact, I wonder if you might actually turn a few of the latter generation Hitachi machines into a bit of a collector's item. I want to put that one under lock and key because that was the last of its kind. I wonder. There's a little investment plan for you. Well, don't take investment advice from me. If I had any sort of investment sense, I probably wouldn't be sat here 5 days a week doing this. So don't take my advice, please. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. It also wraps up this week, actually. So I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. I'll be back on Monday. If you can't stick around, please try and have a good weekend. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after this. Amidst the cacophony of a busy demolition site, a silent conversation is taking place. Conversation uses no words, yet it could be the fundamental difference between a project being completed on time and on budget, or falling behind and spiraling into a loss. That conversation is taking place between the machines on site and a vast, super intelligent telemetry system located potentially thousands of miles away. That system is analyzing millions of pieces of information every single second. It watches everything the machine does and for how long. It monitors engine output, fuel consumption, hydraulic pressures and flows, converting the zeros and ones of binary code into meaningful and vital performance data. In the immediate term, that data is used to improve operations for greater efficiencies. It can identify developing problems long before they become catastrophic failures, potentially saving tens of thousands in repair costs and downtime. But that data is also being harvested for something far more significant. By drawing feedback from hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of machines working across the globe, manufacturers are now able to better understand the real-world demands placed upon their equipment. When applied, that information will be used to make the next generation of machines just a little bit better, a bit stronger, more efficient than their predecessors. And in the main, we're happy for our data to be used in that way. Yeah, I guess the cynical amongst us might express a flicker of concern that their experience with a first generation machine could be used to make a second generation machine better, thereby granting a rival company a competitive advantage in the future. But overall, equipment users take the generous attitude of a rising tide raises all the boats. They accept that their machine's data might help make a competitor's future fleet more reliable because they recognize that a more robust machine benefits the entire industry. They're happy for their data to be used to improve equipment that might benefit them and their rivals. It's just a crying shame they don't take the same approach when it comes to other forms of data and information sharing. While our machines are busy building a global hive mind of efficiency, the professionals directing them are often doing the exact opposite. We treat our methodologies, our safety protocols, and most tragically, our accident and near-miss reports as if they were the crown jewels. We've created a paradox where the tools of our trade are permitted to learn from one another, but the people using them are encouraged to work in splendid isolation. The common defense for this information holding is the protection of intellectual property. There's a lingering fear that if a firm shares a bespoke methodology for, say, the top-down dismantling of a complex structure, they're handing their secret sauce to a rival on a silver platter. But that logic is fundamentally flawed for two primary reasons. Firstly, the global demolition pipeline is vast. No single firm, regardless of their reach, has the capacity to handle every complex project on Earth. You might have developed a game-changing demolition method here in the UK, but that doesn't mean you'll suddenly be selling your services in the United States or the United Arab Emirates. The market is plenty big enough for shared wisdom. And secondly, there's a fundamental difference between a commercial edge and a safety standard. A proprietary software for tender estimations is a legitimate trade secret. However, the knowledge of how a specific structural failure occurred during a demolition is a public health requirement. A near miss in Leeds is a lesson that could save a life in Lyon, in Lisbon, in Los Angeles. And to keep that hidden for the sake of competition is frankly a dereliction of duty. This strategic secrecy actually runs counter to the ways of the modern world. When I wanted to learn live streaming, I watched YouTube videos from people who had already mastered the best methods and who were now sharing that learning free of charge with the rest of the world. If I wanted to grow gooseberries, bake a cake, or build a ham radio setup in my back bedroom, I could consult articles, blog posts, podcasts, and videos from those that have already mastered these things. Surely it's high time that we stop acting like that annoying schoolboy who curled his hand around his exercise book so no one could see his answers or, more importantly, how he got there. Now, I'm not suggesting that the demolition industry sets about creating a series of how-to videos on every aspect of the demolition process. It would take forever, it would cost a fortune, and we certainly don't want Joe Public watching a video and then attempting a DIY bridge demolition. But we already have the mechanisms in place through which to establish an information repository that is a benefit to all, not just the members of certain paid members' clubs. The Institute of Demolition Engineers already has a library of academic-style white papers of this kind, but that library is far from comprehensive and very few people outside the Institute even know of its existence. Meanwhile, national demolition associations may have their own information resources, but that information travels across borders only between exclusive clubs. Here in the UK, the National Federation of Demolition Contractors has a full suite of industry guidance notes, but they're available to members only. The voice of the demolition industry operates on a pay-to-play basis where safety and best practice carry a subscription fee. In the 21st century, when information has been democratized and made available to all, our ongoing insistence upon firewalls and data silos is a relic of a bygone age. If we truly want all the boats to rise, we can't just raise the tide in small private bodies of water. We need the tides to rise across oceans, seas, rivers, lakes, and ponds. And if something we learned in Manchester could save a life in Mumbai, surely that's a good thing, right? I spent some time trying to think of an analogy for the NFDC's insistence on keeping vital safety information behind a members-only firewall. Struggled. I couldn't think of an analogy, but I'm about to tell you the best I could come up with. Imagine there's a group of people stranded on a desert island, and the desert island is divided into two. On one side, the island is habitable, shelter, clean water, but there's no food. On the other side, there's plenty of food, but there's also dangerous wild animals, no clean water, no shelter. To get between the two means getting over a body of water that's patrolled by man-eating great white sharks. At some point, one person has figured out how to avoid the sharks and the wild animals, so he can get from shelter to food and back again very safely. But rather than sharing that information with his comrades, he insists on charging them a subscription fee. They either pay up, or they starve, or they get attacked by wild animals, or they get eaten by sharks. The voice of the global demolition industry. Now, following on from that and just showing that these things are possible, when I did my my guided tour of Italy in summer last year, one of the calls that we made was at the home of Despe, the Italian demolition giant, arguably one of the best, if not the best, demolition company in the world. They have developed systems and solutions that are utterly unique to them. They invited demolition contractors from around the world into their skunk works and said, here's everything we do. Look around, take notes, take photographs, shoot video, help yourselves. And why? Well, obviously, one thing is they're a very, very good company, and the people that run it, Giuseppe Panseri, Stefano Panseri, Roberto Panseri, are good people. They want the industry to improve. The other thing as well is, Despe, by and large, I mean, their top-down way system does travel cross-border, but by and large, they are an Italian company that works in Italy. So if a Dutch company or a German company or a French company or a British company goes along, sees something in their skunk works and says, oh, I'm going to copy that, what difference does that make? Who cares? It's not like they're going to be going head-to-head anytime soon. The other thing that occurred to me with this, particularly in relation not to methodologies, but in terms of health and safety, we're already required to put in place accident reports, RIDDOR reports, if there's an accident, fatality, maybe even a near miss. We're required, by law, to produce a RIDDOR report. Would it not be sensible for that RIDDOR report to be shared with, as I said about the International Powered Access Federation, shared with a central repository under the auspices of somebody that isn't a trade association? In other words, it's open to all. And you could then analyze those RIDDOR reports. If you're, I don't know, let's say falls from height, okay? And we're analyzing the falls from height here and in France and Germany and Italy, in America, in Australia, in New Zealand, in China, Japan, literally around the world. And we feed all of that into a database. And it turns out that, yes, they're all falls from height, but they have something else in common. To then take that thing that they have in common and then produce, based upon that, some additional training. If your people are working at height, be aware of this specific thing, because according to our records, in the past 5 years, that has claimed 150 lives. To prevent that happening again, we've produced this standalone piece of training. And I'll tell you why it doesn't happen. Because the people that have this information in their silos, like the NFDC, are run, even though they are a non-profit organization, they're run on a commercial basis. Now, I understand that. I understand the notion of people getting member benefits. I do it myself. I do it myself. I have my Demolition Insider Substack. 99.9% of everything I produce is readily available to everyone. But I do occasionally produce something that goes out purely to paid members. But I would never, if I had discovered something that could potentially save a life, prevent an accident, prevent a near miss, I would never. There is not a cell in my body that would say, charge for that. Yeah, it's potentially life-saving. There's profit to be made. Who does that? Who does that? Over to the chat. Let me have a very quick look. Who do we have here? OG5061. What's new, Mark? Well, not me, obviously. I'm knocking on the door of 61 years old. Any updates on tender wins? Not me personally. I mean, there are plenty going on. You know, I've got a weird. When we were talking earlier, talking about YouTube, about how YouTube adjusts what it shows you based on what you've seen before, which is a weird thing, really, when you think about it. I've watched a camping video. Doesn't mean that I only ever want to watch camping videos, or, you know, it's a bizarre idea. But my LinkedIn now is it seems to be divided into two. It's either people trying to sell me shit that I would never ever want, or it's demolition and construction companies. Look at us, we've won a new contract. And imagine, and I realize social media works in a slightly different way, but imagine if you had a friend, you meet him every Friday night, and you want to talk about the football or what your kids have done at school, or something you saw on the telly, or a film you went to see, or a book you're reading, or whatever. And every single week he walks through the door and says, guess what? I've just won a contract. I've won a contract, and it's great, and it's a contract, and I've won it. How fucking annoying would that be? That's not adding value to anyone. That's just bragging. And is anybody looking at LinkedIn and seeing that Fred Blogg's Demolition has won a demolition contract and thought, oh, they've won a contract, must sign them up? Has anyone ever done that? What is the purpose of that? I genuinely have no idea. And the thing that makes it even more bizarre on LinkedIn is because they don't want their clients to be tapped up, there's always like an aerial photograph with a red line around the building they're going to be taking down. There's no explanation of where it is or who they're doing it for. It's just this random Google Earth picture with a red line around it. And I've won a new contract. Well, congratulations. What? Why are you telling me? I don't. I honestly couldn't give a monkey's. And like I say, is anybody looking at it thinking, oh, look, they've won another contract. They are clearly the kiddies. We must. In fact, that building that we're building at the moment, let's knock it down. These people seem fantastic. They'd have great fun. They could do a Google Earth photograph and put a red line around it, and then they could demolish it. Oh, they'd be fantastic. Who the fuck is doing that? Nonsense. I realise I've gone completely off the board. I think I've said all I need to say about information sharing. But on the subject of social media, do you know the thing that I find, and Jim, if you're still in the audience, I'm saying this partly to you. You don't need to be told this, but I'm going to say it partly to you because you are heading towards YouTube infamy at some point in the future. It's called social media. The first word is social. It's not sales media. It's not bragging media. It's not look how big my knob is media. It's social media. It's a two-way. It's the sort of thing that people share between themselves, and they have a bit of back and forth. Much like my morning monologue. I've said that morning monologue. There might well be somebody at the NFDC sat there thinking, what a complete twat this Mark Anthony is. If we were speaking to him, I'd tear him off a strip. Maybe they are, but there would be an interaction. I'm not sat here just boasting. Ooh. Get myself all worked up now, I have. Anyway, people, that will do us for today. I think that's an hour of your life that you're never, ever going to get back, and I apologise profusely for that, having wasted your morning. I'm going to be back on Monday, so if you are of that, if you're that way inclined, please join us. I don't know what we're talking about on Monday. I do know that I've got, funnily enough, I do actually have a paid-only post that I'm going to be doing over the weekend, which is talking about social value and the fact that, as far as I can see, It's a rip-off. If you fancy it, you can see it. Jim says, I enjoyed LinkedIn. I have nothing to push or brag about, but I enjoy sharing my work, views, and projects. It's the only reason I'm on there. You know, and here's another weird thing, which just goes to show, you know, how these things work out. I took yesterday's morning monologue. What was yesterday's morning monologue? I can't remember what it was actually called. Bear with me a second. Oh, yeah, let's hang on to what we've got. It was talking about holding on to machines for longer for all the environmental reasons. On LinkedIn, biggest post of the week. Lots of people talking about it. Lots of views. No, loads of comments. I've had a few private messages about it as well. Put it over on Substack, and it's the worst, the worst performing post of the week. Go figure. Go figure. It's a horses for courses, and it's completely beyond my ken. So I'm going to, well, I'll be putting this one up, but talking about caring is sharing. I think that's what I've called it for today. So go over to LinkedIn, give it a like. I'd be very grateful. And here is Dan signing off. Have a great weekend, guys. Stay safe. Be happy. New guys, your loved ones. I get the idea. So, yeah, give your loved ones a big old hug, because frankly they deserve it. I can actually hear mine outside the door, so I'm going to go and do that now. Have a great weekend, everyone. I'll see you on Monday. Thanks for your company. Thanks for all your input. Have a good one. All the best.